So that's going to be like the start of what we do here now. So now let's take and let's program our midtone. So I'm going to double click on that and create a note track here. Double click on this. And for the midtones, so our low note was C1, so I want a C2 for sure. And I'm going to drag that out. And our high note was a C8. So basically I'm going to take all these notes that are in between. You want to grab all the C's. So C2, C3, and you're just going to keep kind of scrolling up. C4, C5, and oops, C6, and one more, C7. Okay, so we've got all those notes now, and these are all of our midtones, and these are all going to go up as well. Close that track. So we need to two-finger tap on this and automate again. Master and tune. Again, hopefully you're starting to get pretty quick on this step here. Drag that out, open it up, pull that out. It's going to start at that pitch, and then at the end we're going to get up to that pitch. Okay. And with our midtones, we don't need to fade them in or out. They're just going to be kind of constantly going up this whole time. All right. The last thing we need to do is we do need to set our loop point. So if you two-finger tap on any one of these tracks, really, just so it's highlighted, it'll bring up this menu here. And you want to select loop regions. Okay. And that's going to, you'll see this bar up top kind of highlight here, and then we've got this loop that is going to be happening now. So when it gets to the end here, it's now going to just come right back to the beginning and play. And I'm going to go ahead and turn down the headphones just a little bit. Zoom out up here. Remember, if you push tab, you can focus in on different areas. This is my headphone output. I'm going to just turn this down a little bit because right now it's going to be a little bit annoying, and we're going to tone shape it in just a second, but let's just make sure it's working right now. Cool, sounds like it's working. So one thing that you'll notice is that when it looped back, you kind of heard like a bonk, right? And some of that bonk, we're going to try and get rid of that, really. But some of it's probably always going to be a little bit present. I just want to put that out there because just because of the nature of Audiotool and kind of some of the limitations that we have. But there are some things we can do to eliminate that bonk because we want this to sound like it's just forever going up. And that bonk that happens when it loops back kind of is jarring that way, right? So the first thing I want to do is add some reverb. So let's go over to this reverb plugin right here. And this is kind of set up in a unique way where it's set out of our aux1 send is what that is. And what that allows us to do is allows us to send any one of these channels in through our mixing board to this reverb. And the advantage of doing it that way, there's a few advantages, but one of the really big advantages is that we can just use one reverb and we can run all of these three synthesizers through that one reverb. Otherwise, you'd have to like put one in between each of these, and then when you wanted to adjust it, you have to adjust all three, and it's kind of a pain in the butt that way. But with the aux sends, we can just send them all through this reverb, and we just have to adjust this one place. Another cool thing that we can do is if you zoom in on these tracks, here's our high tone, low tone, mid tone. You'll see there's an aux1 knob there. And so you can actually adjust how much reverb you want on each track. And I'm going to go ahead and pretty close to max it out, but not quite on all of these for now. We want a lot of reverb. So I'm just going to turn that quite a bit up. And then I'm actually, while I'm here, I'm going to turn these faders down a little bit, especially that high note. That one for me really gets annoying, and so I'm going to turn that down just a little bit and turn all of these down just a little bit, so I've got a little bit of room to work with on the volume so that we'll be shaping that later. So I've got my aux sends turned up and these volumes turned down a little bit. Let's go over to our reverb plugin now and look on this here. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to turn up the decay quite a bit, not quite all the way, but maybe around 80-85%, somewhere like that. The dampening I'm going to turn up a little bit. The pre-delay I'm going to turn up about halfway. The LPF, which stands for low pass filter, I'm going to turn down just a little bit. That's going to roll off some of those high frequencies also. And then the dry wet knobs. So the dry signal is your original signal without reverb. And then the wet sound is your reverb sound, right? So this one I'm going to turn up a little bit, and I'm going to turn the dry all the way down. So let's play this now and just see what this sounds like. Cool. It's already starting to sound a lot better. So here's where we get to kind of play around with the sound a little bit, and I'm going to just show you a few things that you can mess around with. Up to this point, I really expect you to all have the exact same settings on everything. But after this point, I'm going to just show you a bunch of different things that I want you to mess around with to try and get your own unique Shepard tones sound. It still should do the same, you know, infinitely rising things, but there's a lot of different variations you can put on it. And so next couple minutes, I'm just going to show you a few things that you can mess around with to help smooth out that loop point, and then also to help maybe if you want a little bit more edgy or darker sounding Shepard tone, or if you want like a more ethereal, spacey one. There's a lot of different things you can do with that. So your reverb, what that's really doing is kind of adding that bigness, and it's also helping smooth out your sound. And so you can mess with the dry and wet blend, you know, turning the wet up or the dry up, and kind of just getting that dialed in with that. Pre-delay will do some interesting things. Decay will do some interesting things, but be careful about going past about 90% because it'll really start getting out of control if you get past that point. The dampener, generally I'll keep that at half or less. And then the rest of this stuff I would say don't mess with, but yeah, go ahead if you want to. Let's come back to our sounds here. So I told you before, like these sine waves are these nice smooth kind of sounding ones, right? And for our highest pitch, that's this top one, I really do want to keep that on the smooth sounding one. But sometimes on my low pitch, I like that one to be a little bit more edgy sounding, just to give it a little bit more ominous sound. And so I'll use a different waveform. Instead of the sine wave, if you click on that, you get all these other different ones, right? So I'm gonna try a triangle, just a little bit edgier kind of sound on that one. And I'm going to show you what that sounds like. I'm going to solo that track by pushing the S button on that low tone. And we won't hear it in the beginning. But once it starts fading in, right about between 4 and 5, it's very subtle. Let's make it a little bit more edgy even. Let's try Sawtooth. Yeah, that's kind of cool. It's got a little bit more edge to it, right? And then likewise with my midtones, that's really like where most of the personality from your Shepard tone's coming from. And so I'm gonna try. I generally don't like to have like a really crazy one, but maybe like the stepped one might be kind of cool here. Let's try that. I'm gonna go back and solo just my midtones. Try a few different waveforms out. That one's pretty intense. Cool. And while we're got it soloed, let's see if we can smooth this one out a little bit more. Looks like my attack got bumped on this one, or maybe I forgot to set it. You can also adjust the shape of the attack. This is your filter over here. Sometimes I like to just roll off a little bit of that top part by bringing that circle back. And you can see it's quite a smooth Shepard tone now, which is amazing to me that Audiotool can do that. That's a pretty complex program that we just did. So that was just the midtones too. Let's bring back in everything and see what we got. Cool, it sounded pretty good. Okay, so one more thing I want you to just be aware of is make sure you look at your meters up here and that you're not going in the red. Sometimes when we start piling all these things on top of each other, it can really get too loud up in there, and then you're adding a bunch of distortion, right? So just kind of be aware of that. If you are getting in the red, either turn down your dry and wet knobs a little bit or come back over to the mixer and maybe cut down some of these different sounds here so that you're not driving that too hot. And that's it for the Shepard tone. That should be pretty good. Now we're going to be able to use these later on when we do some of our sound designs too, to create that kind of infinite tension that we talked about in the video that you watched before. So enjoy and spend some time kind of messing around with these settings to make your Shepard tone unique sounding, but still have that same kind of ominous effect. And just to put this out there, Shepard tones can also go infinitely down. The only thing you'd need to change is that pitch or the tune automation. You would, instead of pitching it up every time, you'd be pitching it down every time. And then you'd also want to kind of do the reverse with the low tone and the high tone, where the high tone kind of comes out of nowhere and then fades into like full strength, and the low tone does the exact opposite. So just to put out there, if you're interested in this stuff and want to mess around further, a lot of stuff you can do with Shepard tone.